Hi, what's up, Exile? Welcome to Ding Ding's PLE chat. Today I'm going to be sharing my version of a very classy Corrupting Fever champion build. I've added my own little twist to the build, which I'm not actually sure if it's better or worse. This is actually the first time I'm playing a champion character, but anyhow, I'm having a blast. If you have seen some build guides on those very popular streamers, the most classic setup is to use a poet's pen with a shield. And using Kinetic Blast, it's an attack spell to proc Corrupting Fever to create a huge explosion. However, the difficulty is, number one, the Poet's Pen is very expensive nowadays, and number two, the Skin of the Lord, which adds extra levels to the gem, is more expensive as well, and not as easy to obtain. So the Corrupting Fever will be very low damage comparing to how we're able to get pretty good damage on a relatively cheap gear right now. So I saw this other guide. It's using Cold Iron Point to replace Poet's Pen and to give the Corrupting Fever a lot more gem levels, which boosts up our damage. But the downside of using a Cold Iron Point is that we cannot use Kinetic Blast anymore. And this other guy is using Spectral Throw, which is an attack with a dagger, to proc Corrupting Fever. It looks okay, but my experience using Spectral Throw on the Corrupting Fever is not very good. It's just very clunky to play and the attack speed is rather slow. So I was looking for alternatives to create those very satisfying big explosions while not having to stand there and attack a couple times every once in a while. Let's get into it. So I've already mentioned Cold Iron Point gives us a lot of gem level for a lot better damage comparing to a traditional PP setup, Poet's Pen setup. And it also has another upside, which is our movement build becomes Whirling Blade instead of Shield Charge. For some reason, I really hate Shield Charge. It's like really easy to cut into like corners on the maps, and sometimes you'll just find yourself standing right where you are and Shield Charging toward a pillar or something. Whirling Blade tend to have those moments a little bit less. And another problem using a Spectral Throw to proc Corrupting Fever, other than our very slow attack speed, is that it's really difficult to ramp up the Corrupting Fever stack. If you know the mechanic of Corrupting Fever, it stacks up to 10 stacks, and that's when our damage is the highest. So in my experience in this league start, even though when my Corrupting Fever is almost level 30, I still find it really difficult to one-shot mobs, one-shot T60 mobs, just by attacking once on the Spectral Throw. So instead of using a Spectral Throw to proc Corrupting Fever, my solution is to use Stormbrand, which is originally only used while bossing on Corrupting Fever. So how Stormbrand works is that it procs every 0.5 seconds. So you get 2 stacks of Corrupting Fever every second. And I know what you're thinking. Wait, that's not even that fast, right? However, comparing to the Spectral Throw, the advantage is you can place down the Stormbrand and you can just get going on your business. You don't have to stand there and keep attacking. So yes, technically it doesn't help on making the enemy die faster, but with one pack of enemy, you only need to cast once and then you can keep going forward. And because of how tanky the champion is, you don't really care about charging into a pack of monster and not being able to survive. Okay, so that's out of the way. I know what you're thinking. The next question is, if you're using a spell, how do we proc explosion? Because the core unique glove, Hemophilia, specifically says that the bleeding enemies you kill will explode, and your attack has 25% chance to cause bleeding. If you're using a spell, we don't really have any means to cause bleeding, so there's no explosion. And my alternative to that is by using another very popular explosive glove called Asenath's Gentle Touch. And an Asenath's Gentle Touch says, curse the enemy with temporal chains on hit, and enemies you kill near the corpses that are cursed will explode. So basically it's the same thing. You curse them, and whenever they die, they will explode. Now, the next question is, temporal chain is not necessarily our preferred curse, right? Usually it's used for a poison build, and we are a physical damage over time. So we prefer vulnerability. How do we get vulnerability instead of temporal chain? Very easy. We used a curse on hit ring with a vulnerability, and the curse on hit ring will prioritize over the curse on hit on our glove. So if you have the curse on hit ring and you have one curse limit, it's always going to be the curse that's on your ring instead of on your glove. So that's all of my modification to the build. The build is amazing, and shout out to the original creator. His channel is called I Love Rutu. I find this playstyle to be a lot smoother and one less button to worry about when you're switching in between mapping and bossing, because you're putting Stormbrand on basically just anyone and everyone. Oh, and here's a side note that I find really useful. I was struggling while the buff of the Corrupting Fever only lasts about 7 or 8 seconds, and you have to spend enough of life in order to refresh that buff. Otherwise, you have to keep activating the Corrupting Fever, which is kind of clunky, and I just don't like pressing a lot of buttons. And because the Stormbrand, the mana cost in our case, because we have life tap on it, in our case, the Stormbrand is not really costing us a lot of life. So I was having difficulty to keep the buff on because I didn't have to cast all the time. And I found instead of using life tap, we can use an Anomalos Life tap. It'll cost a little bit more life when we're casting the spell. And I find that helps me to sustain my Corrupting Fever buff, so I don't have to activate it like so often. And as you can see in the background, this is when I was mapping. This build is amazing for expeditions. You just lay down the brands evenly here and there, and then when the monsters come out, you proc your Corrupting Fever, wait for 3 to 4 seconds, and then the whole screen of monsters will be demolished. The big explosions is very satisfying to watch. This is like the whole PoE joy. So that's all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you like what you're seeing, please give me a like, thumbs up, and turn on the notification. I'll see you next time. Bye!